What happened? How did we get here? From here to here to here. In this episode, I'm going to analyze a flight of one of my subscribers. We're going to look at the chain of events that led to this crash landing and very scary flight. We're going to see what decisions have been made and evaluate what might have been better options. Through this episode, you will learn to look at your own decision making. Welcome to Flight Coach. If you're new here, my name is Bas van Duin and it is my mission to help you get more out of life and your flying career, to having less stress and more skills. And I do that in two ways. With this YouTube channel, on which I weekly upload, in my opinion, quality content for you to chew on. And the other way is with the services that Flight Coach provides. And one of those is video analysis. Anyone worldwide can send me the videos of their paraglider, launch or landing, and I can give you some golden tips to improve with. One of my very active subscribers, Nicola, sent me a video in which he had a very horrible flight and a crash landing afterwards. And he sent it to me after watching my series about fear of flying. And we got into a very extensive conversation via email, and he told me, "Boss, take a look at this footage, see if you can get any lessons out of it that you can show to others on your channel." That's exactly what we're going to do today. Now, I always have a huge respect to people sharing their lessons online and offline so others can benefit from that. So Nicola, you're great. And to start off with, the pilot in this video did not get physically hurt. I will show you an ultra short summary of key moments in this flight. Then we can go into more detail, cherry picking the different decision moments in this flight that I think that could have been improved upon. You can see the takeoff here. Pilot is gaining altitude. You can see a lot of shaking, getting into some really violent collapses, and eventually ending up with what I can call a serious crash landing that could have ended way worse. Once again, pilot did not sustain any physical injury, but that certainly does not mean that everything was alright. We'll get back to that later. When you zoom in at an accident, an incident, a near miss or whatever, it is usually quite easy to draw conclusions. Usually those are the wrong conclusions, by the way. Let's say a pilot hits a building. Everyone can say, "It is bad to hit a building. You should not hit buildings." No, I completely agree. But when zooming out, there usually is a bigger picture. There is a chain of events that happened that led to this accident or incident. And when all these chains hook up, you get an incident. You get a nasty outcome. You get an injury. But when one of these chains does not happen, you have a completely different outcome. Now, the beauty of this is that you have many opportunities to make a different decision, leading you to a completely different outcome. Now, you may think, "Yeah, boss, that only works when you know everything in advance," but you don't, right? Now, that fortunately is not entirely true. I have been flying hang gliders and paragliders for 26 years now. I have seen a lot of incidents, some of them even fatal. And when looking at all those incidents, there is a huge overlap in bad decision making. Now, wouldn't you agree? It would be freaking awesome if you were able to recognize some of these chain links, so you can prevent these incidents from happening to you. So let's look at the video, let's look at some key decision points, and let's see what decisions have been made and what might have been a better alternative. So that looked like a pretty relaxed takeoff. Now we're just into the flight a few seconds. You can already see that there is quite a lot of wind. You can see that by the angle that the glider has in relation to the landscape. The wind is coming from our left now. You can see the trees move. Now, the first thought that comes to mind when I try to imagine myself being in that situation is, there is strong wind. Make sure that you stay upwind of the slope and that you do not go higher, or only very carefully, because when you go higher, the wind might increase further. We see over here is what we call a horizontal venturi. It is two sides of this shoulder converging, increasing the wind speed. So the wind over there is much stronger and generally more turbulent. You should not fly close to that, and especially not in the lee of such a zone, because the lee of such zones are particularly violent. And one of the things that I see happening throughout this entire video is that the pilot is holding on to the risers. That reduces your control over the glider and feel with the glider. We'll get back to that later, but it's something that you should not do. We're now over 3 minutes into the flight and I see that the pilot is still not in the pod. Now this may seem like just a comfort issue, but actually it is not. Because with this type of harnesses, that means that the pilot also has no access to the speed system. Now would be a great time to get into the pod and to check the speed margin. Just accelerate the glider and see how much forward speed in relation to the slope you still have. 5.5 minutes into the flight now and I can see that the pilot is entering the pod. At around 8 minutes in, I believe the pilot starts noticing that he might be in trouble. We can see the shadow in relation to the ground not moving forward anymore. This is a big danger sign. At this point you should take action. You should make yourself as aerodynamic, as small as possible. So what I mean by that is moving your upper body as far backward as possible. You can do this with any type of harness. You don't need to have a pod harness for this. Recline, lean back, put your feet up. You can see my feet. Yeah, you can see my feet now. Put your feet up until you feel the turbulence that your feet are causing in your face. This is your most aerodynamically possible shape. Also, when my arm is the riser, hold your other arm that's holding the brake behind it. So you're flying like this. Pick the shortest and most direct line possible from the position you're at into the valley, away from the slope. Because that means you're also leaving the area of high wind, the venturi area. Because when you're flying above a slope, there's also increased wind over there. And of course, push bar for maximum glide. That does not mean push maximum bar. The best way to see if you're flying the correct amount of speed is checking your instrument. It has to be a GPS based instrument, but you can see your actual glide ratio and you want to have that as high as possible. A point of positional awareness: in these two gullies, I think that's the proper term, the wind is the strongest due to the earlier discussed venturi effect. You do not want to get in the lee of that. 10 minutes into the flight and we can see that the pilot is flying the bar here. You can see that by the deformation of the risers. So the pilot is accelerating the glider to better penetrate into wind. What we see a little bit later is that the pilot is actually descending and is moving sideways in relation to the slope. Another 2 minutes later comes a very interesting and, from my perspective, key decision making point. Pilot decides to start turning and to gain altitude. What we can see, and I zoomed in on the altimeter before and after this move, pilot is actually gaining 30 meters of altitude, but is being blown back at least 80 meters. It happens again. Pilot apparently caught part of a thermal. I think it's a thermodynamic wind, so wind that is being lifted by the slope, in which also a thermal exists. The pilot sticks to a course with tailwind for quite a while, gains another 15 meters in altitude, but is being blown back another 120 meters, is my estimate. So what has actually happened here with these two decisions to start turning instead of staying flying into the wind? Is that 45 meters in altitude have been gained, but at least 200 meters of horizontal distance that you're trying to cross the whole time. You're trying to get away from that mountain. 200 meters of that precious distance has been lost. This has been a very unfavorable exchange. Now here we see what looked like creeping forward a little bit. But now again, pilot flies sideways into the lee of the Venturi again. A little later, he enters the turbulence from the trees. Look at that shaking. At this point, it is very important to have maximum weight shift authority over your glider. If you're not super experienced, I can recommend you to sit up as straight as possible. Be ready to do a full weight shift to the side of your wing that is still flying, because you're about to get your ass kicked by turbulence. And here we see it happening. Look at the shadow. There's a big collapse on the left side. You should be leaning to the right at this point. And by leaning, I mean, if this is a riser, leaning like this. At this point in time, you may need to make the decision, which did not happen here, but to make the decision, this is not gonna work. I'm getting into such a turbulent and dangerous zone. I'm getting so low to the ground now, and there's only lee ahead of me. I am going to land in a tree. Yes, of course, it is unpractical to land in a tree, but it very, very rarely leads to any kind of injury. Okay, you might damage your glider a little bit. Safety-wise, aiming for an unobstructed field in these conditions is way more dangerous than trying to land in a tree. A few minutes later, here we go again. I still see no real pilot action. It appears that the pilot is just waiting it out. The pilot is terrified. Maybe the pilot thinks it is okay to wait and to not make it worse. Yes, lower class gliders up until the B level, they will restore themselves in time. But this takes way longer. It will cost you more precious altitude than being actively involved in solving the collapse. Man, can you imagine how Nikolai must be feeling at this point in time? It's absolutely horror. A little later, finally, he decides to turn to the left, going into a bumpy zone, but lifting over a shoulder. Now over here, another key decision point. We can see that the pilot is really close to the ground, not having a lot of forward speed. At this point in time, the biggest risk is that you get smacked down on the deck. Anytime, it can happen anytime, because you're still flying in the lee. The most important thing you should be thinking about in these conditions is to get your legs out. Rather break both of your legs than injure your back. He gets behind another ridge, so it's now just waiting for it. Here we see it again, another 50% collapse, a huge dive. Again, I see no active pilot response. I think that what we're seeing is a panic response, grabbing the risers and holding on to those. Pilot is not stopping the dive, but appears to be just riding with it. Here we see the pilot heading into another Venturi lee. I would personally steer to the right and land there, even if I had to flare at 3 meters altitude. Pilot continues on, maybe in search of a better landing spot. I would steer to the right. Just fly into the wind, flare it out, get your legs out. And here the pilot, while still in a seated position, tries to make a butterfly landing on a bush that softens his fall. He rolls over. Now, as said, the pilot did not have any physical injury, but the mental impact of this flight and subsequent crash landing was huge. Knowing, or maybe even expecting, that you may get severely hurt, and this lasting for minutes on end, that is true terror. That leaves its mark. So beware of speaking to a pilot that has been in an incident like this and saying to him or her, "I'm glad you are alright." I can assure you that pilot will not be alright, even though physically everything is okay. But yeah, after this flight, he told me personally, Nikolai developed a serious fear of flying. After this flight, he made a few short flights, after which he decided to land, and he has not been flying for a year after that. If you recognize any of this, maybe you have been in an incident, please know that I can help you with that. I made an entire series about fear of flying specifically for us recreational aviators. I'll place a link to it right up here. And I can also coach you personally. Check out the link in the description below for the coaching packages that I offer. So after not flying for a year, by coincidence, he found my channel. We got in touch, developed a very nice relationship. He told me his entire story. He sent me this video. And I'm very happy to inform you. You can also, well, just read it yourself in the email he sent me a few days ago. He is flying again. He is making cross-country flights again. He is getting back on the horse. And I applaud you for that, Nicola. And thanks for sharing your story. I'm very happy that I've been able to contribute a small part in you recovering mentally. So a few tips, takeaways from this. I always try to think of it as 3 levels in flying. You have the strategy level, the tactics level, and the technique level. At a strategy level, my recommendation is have a plan A, and also have a plan B. And be prepared to switch from your plan A to your plan B. And on the tactics level, avoid Venturi-induced Lee at all costs. And on the technique level, fly actively. Prevent and respond to disturbances with earth-scorching aggressiveness. And I don't mean flapping around your arms like a madman, but I mean being decisive, being the captain of your aircraft. Use the full range of motions that are at your disposal. The full range of weight shift, both slow and aggressive. Using the full range of your brakes. Waiting it out is not the way to deal with these situations. Please let me know, did you find this informative? It's a different kind of video than I'm usually making. I'm thinking about making more of them. Please let me know in the comments down below. If you have any material yourself you would like me to analyze, I can also do that anonymously. Please be in touch. See you next time. See you in the air.